who made $5,000 or less at the end of the month. This was put in place because there were significant issues, of course, with respect to supply chain, the war, and inflation. No other country in the OECD Caribbean came close to this. With the budget boost wallet, as I've mentioned, that helped so many of our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, the other matter, we also did VAT reduction for a period of that time as well, so that they could have really gotten an ease while we saw that inflation was being increased as a result of no issue to do with St. Kitts and Nevis, but because of what was happening internationally. So we have done all of that for our people. Now, lately, what have we done for our people? The fuel relief measures. The government continues to absorb a lot of the cost. So we had a 50% reduction in gasoline excise tax from EC 195 to EC 98 cents to ease the cost that people would have to pay to drive their vehicles. This includes, of course, buses and so forth. The custom service charge, we also cut that from 6% to 3%. And this is costing the government, I think, over $1 million to bring direct relief with respect to the increase in energy. We, of course, are not responsible for the fuel costs around the world because we buy fuel. Nonetheless, this Labour administration is making sure that we do what we have to do to protect our people. I want to deal with one last matter before I leave, and that is the present matter. So we have impacted the cost of fuel by taking those measures to reduce it, and now we are on the issue of other costs. But one of the issues I want to deal with today is the cost of the basic, what we call dollar bread, which we mean is the $2 bread, really. And one of the things I want to stress today, and I think a statement was sent out by the Cost of Living Committee that addressed the matter. Let me say clearly and emphatically, the government did not approve for the increase of the bread from $2 to $3. And therefore, that statement, I think, is a firm statement to say to those who would seek to do it, to refrain from doing it, to readjust your prices, to ensure that you stay in compliance with what the government is pushing. The basic $2 bread, that price increase is not supported by the government. And the government is asking that the necessary measures be taken to ensure that the price remain at $2. And therefore, I want to now say something with respect to it. I asked for a direct purchase from the bakeries to see what is really going on. And so I brought some bread here with me today, and I will say it clearly. I went to the bakeries to see. So can you pass me those breads? I have breads here, and I have the receipt here. And I think there is from, and I want to get it right, and I call some of these from the Ashton Bakery. This is the Amway Bakery. This bread is bought for $2. And I think a press release is being put out by Amway Bakery to say there is no increase and no intention to increase. This was bought for $2 today. I also want to point out the Bass Bakery bread, that this bread was also bought for $2 today. And in this, talking with Bass Bakery, there is no increase of this bread, nor the intention to increase the bread. Also freights, $2 as well, bought today. And they have indicated they have not increased, and I have confirmed that. And I also want to say that this was bought today. And freights again, there is no intention to increase this bread. The normal policy practice is if you are going to touch the basic bread, this is the basic loaf of bread, there must be discussion, as is customary, the government, to discuss what is going on, because this is the bread that most people depend on. You just can't touch this bread and increase it without having a discussion with the government. And therefore, this administration that the people have given me to lead, I will not allow this to happen. And therefore, I am asking. I also sent to Island Bakery And in Island Bakery, I have the receipt here. Date is right here as well. The 3rd of the 6th, 2026 at 1:16 p.m. Station 1. The employee's name is here. The name I will not call. Order number 883. 1 long bread, $3. All these other bakeries that I bought from, $2. I spoke to them. No increase and no intention to increase. However, from the Island Bakery, I'm seeing here a $3 increase. This will not be accepted. I think Island Bakery, and I've spoken to them, I sought to meet with the general manager. There has to be a meaningful discussion, and I'm admonishing them to follow what is a normal practice and reduce the cost of this bread. Have a conversation with the government. We are open. You don't just increase the cost of the basic long bread without a discussion with the government. The people must be protected. And that is why I said that this is a people-centered government that will not accept something like this. The least that can happen is that the government should be informed, and that did not take place. And therefore, I'm asking Island Bakery to act appropriately. Of course, I'm pro-business. I want to see businesses do well. I'm happy that, that businesses made record profit even during these difficult times. TDC reported record profit. Horsford reported record profit. We see an increase in profit through businesses. So we are pro-business, and we want to support business. And the minister is here, Honorable Congress Maynard, when there was an issue about the bus fee. A committee was put together. Consultations were done. Many things were put in place to ensure it was smooth, it was just, and it was correct. How can you go from $2 to $3? That's a 50% increase on the most basic of staple for our people here in St. Kitts and Nevis without a discussion with the government. And so I want this company to continue to do well. I want to continue to support businesses in St. Kitts and Nevis, but I think at this time that I want the people to know these are the facts surrounding this, and I look forward to a meaningful discussion, or the cost of living committee having a meaningful discussion with Island Bakery. I am saying to Island Bakery, please adjust your cost of bread to $2. Come in and sit with the government. And I want to applaud the other 3 major bakeries who have decided and have no plans to increase the $2 bread. Hence, there was no need for them to reach out to the government. So I want to say again, Ashton Amory Bakery, Bass Bakery, and Fritz Bakery all have the basic long bread at $2. And so persons can get their $2 bread still here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I'm looking forward to Island Bakery taking the necessary steps and having that necessary conversation with us. I will do everything to protect the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, especially under these trying times. We have contributed significantly, and we'll continue to do so. This is a people-centered government, a people-centered party, and the dollar bread shouldn't go up without we know. We need a meaningful discussion to ensure that our people are protected, and therefore we continue to be pro-business, but business and government need to sit down from time to time, and we are open. Conversations can be had. There might be disagreements, but at least let there be a conversation. For example, on the minimum wage, there were disagreements on the minimum wage. We know that. But we sat and had a conversation with the chamber and other interested parties. They put their reports together. Central Bank did, the government did, multiple people did. And then we looked at the matter, and then a decision was made. Of course, the decision from the Labour Party's perspective that leads this administration is that we think that the minimum wage should go up to $500. So we did that, and businesses made profit, record profit. And so we want to be pro-business, and we want to be pro-people, but people first. And we want to create an environment where businesses can thrive. So this, therefore, means that more conversations should be had. But the normal policy practice, as with bus fares, that before you consider moving any bus fares, you must inform the government. There must be proper analysis and investigation and cooperation of all involved to reach a fare that satisfies multiple stakeholders. But to move unilaterally with the basic bread, where everybody knows the normal practices, before you touch the price of the basic bread, there must be a conversation with the government. And therefore, we are insisting that this be done. So I've just pointed out that, and I'm going by Bass tomorrow. I'm afraid to buy the bread myself, but I'm happy for those who are able to do it. So I just wanted to put that forward and to let people know we'll continue to protect them as far as the cost of living is concerned. These are trying times. Things are happening around the world that we don't have any control over. However, we must sit down, discuss, and do the best for our people, and this government will continue. You know what surprised me? I see on some blogs, some political blogs somewhere, quick to jump, $3 bread. Well, it's only one break, we're selling it for $3, and that is very questionable as well. But never pointed out the other major bakeries that got the bread for $2 and have decided that they will not move the cost of their bread. I think that must be pointed out as well, and therefore we'll continue to lead on this matter. This Labour Party will continue to be a party that puts people first. Thank you, Jamie. I'll turn it over, of course, to my colleague here,
Minister
the Deputy Leader, and I know he'll touch on a number of critical matters as well. And then I'll slip out, leave him, because I have to go to a funeral in KL.
So you're leaving now?
Not now. I'll hang on a few minutes as the Minister presents. I'll just slip out at the appropriate time.
But we want to thank you for coming and bringing that information to us as well. Minister Maynard?
Thank you very much, Jamie. Always a pleasure to be here, and allow me an opportunity to tell everyone who is listening a pleasant good afternoon. I want to thank the Prime Minister as well and leader of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party for being here and for being as transparent as we are in this administration on what challenges we face and how we are dealing with them to maintain St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party as a people-centered political organization where we are only focused on the good that we can do. Talking about good that we can do, let us talk about some of the activities which we've done to improve the lives of people in St. Kitts and Nevis, and in particular in St. Kitts with this particular issue. Firstly, as we look around our island right now, there is a distinct difference to how it looked just 3 months ago. We see a number of bushfires happening. We see play fields almost turn into dust. We see the landscape looking brown, almost like the entirety of the island had a fire. That is because of the real situation of an extended drought that we are under. In fact, based on the information I have from what is called the, let me get the name correct, CARICOF, which is the CARICOM Climate Forum that gives outlooks on climate activities in the region. St. Kitts right now is under what is a drought warning. That will ease going down into as we enter into the rainy season and become what is a drought watch. But the point is that we are experiencing a significant drought event. I think the Water Services Department would have put out something for April already, that where we are usually receiving about 4 inches of rain in April in our dry season, where we've only gotten 1.5 inches. And for 2026 so far, we've only received 50% of the rainfall that we got at this time last year.
Wow.
And we've only received 55% of the rainfall, the traditional rainfall that we would have for this period over the past couple of years. 50% reduction in rainfall. So this brings us to a very, very important point. The St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party administration, upon entering office to administer the government, realized the dire situation that water was in. I keep saying that of all the ministries that I inherited, this was the one with the least amount of work for me to go on. There was no active plan to resolve the water situation in St. Kitts, even though these predictions existed. I picked up a document that specifically said, and this was 2014, what will happen over the next decade and where we will be today. And the predictions are almost spot on in terms of the amount of rainfall we're going to have, the reduction in the rainfall, etc., and what we need to do. And none of it was taken on board. And so when we took office, we effectively had to go back to that point in 2014 and do everything that should have happened in that 7.5 years. And we've made significant progress, but there is still more work to be done. And so in the area of SKN, we drilled a well there. And after decades of water challenges, the majority of people in SKN now have access to regular 24-hour water service because of the success of the drilling campaign there, bringing about 300,000 to 400,000 gallons of water per day to that community. The persons who don't receive regular water in those areas is simply an operational challenge where they actually reside higher than the storage tank, or they reside very close to the level of the storage tank. And to deal with that, we have already constructed the new storage tank in SKN, and now we're working on the pipeline to reach all the way up to the storage tank so that we can store the water in that tank so that everyone in SKN will have access to 24-hour water. So when something happens in SKN, it's not necessarily because we don't have water, but there will be occasional operational issues. Pumps need fixing, pipelines need fixing, so you won't be out of water for an extended period of time, as was the case many decades before. And I know the Prime Minister, who represents that area, is particularly pleased about the success of what we've done in SKN. From SKN, we also now come to another area of the country that was experiencing tremendous water challenges, which is the Bastia environment. And when we looked at the science and the options that we had, the only option for the Bastia area was the investment in desalination. Why? One, because we knew what the rainfall levels looked like. There was no indication that our rainfall situation would improve. Two, our Bastia Valley aquifer, which depends on rainfall, was already being overdrawn. So rainfall is projected to decrease, and we are withdrawing from the Bastia Valley aquifer. The science tells us we need to reduce taking water from our aquifer, and so that was not an option. Additionally, St. Kitts in particular has what you called unconfined aquifers, meaning they're sort of interconnected in spaces. So almost the entire Bastia Valley area can be considered one large aquifer. Okay. So even if we drill a well, say in Shadwell or to the bottom of St. Peter's or right here in the west, we're almost pulling from the same aquifer. So it was not prudent for us to then find extra millions of gallons from this area of St. Kitts through aquifer development or well development. So our only recourse was the development of desalination. And thanks again to the Labour Party administration, when I would have brought this to the cabinet and what the findings were and what we need to do, there was no opposition whatsoever. And the Prime Minister, being Minister of Finance, and the entire cabinet gave its full support and joined in this effort to make sure that we were able to build out what is a historic project, successful project of a 2 million gallon per day desalination plant, right here in Bastia. That is now able to feed areas like Bird Rock, East Bastia, almost Central Bastia, as far up to maybe the college directly will get water from the desal, the Frigate Bay, Southeast Peninsula area, maybe as far over as Connery, etc. So Bastia and its environs, because that water goes into a tank system that supplies that area. What the desal then allows for us to do as well, and let me stop there and say, so for the first time in over a decade, you have people who are experiencing 24-hour water for the first time in over a decade. Whether it is in Bird Rock, in East Bastia, in certain parts of Taylors and Shadwell, etc. For the first time in over a decade, they're receiving 24-hour water. So we've done some work. However, the desal does not go directly to everywhere in St. Kitts. And so there are areas that still are not yet fully impacted. But what are we doing? So some of that water which we used to take from the Bastia Valley Aquifer, remember we have to reduce how much we withdraw from it, right? That's the first thing. But we are able to redirect that water to other areas. We've completed some of those interconnections. That is what helps, for instance, areas like Shadwell and Taylors. We've been able to redirect some water that usually would go to other areas of East Bastia and Bird Rock and so on, etc., and redirected them to areas like Olivies, where the storage facility there is, and Laguite. The next interconnection we're working on is the one to St. Peter's. That will allow us to take some of the water from the Bastia Aquifer, some more of the water from the Bastia Aquifer, and put it up into St. Peter's. Now, why is this important? St. Peter's in particular, which is another area of the Prime Minister's constituency, is fed not only from the Bastia Valley Aquifer, but also from a source called Green Hill, which used to supply Keyon and also St. Peter's. So you were getting a source in St. Peter's from both the aquifer and Green Hill. But remember, we've had 50% drop-off in rain, which is directly related to a 50% drop-off in the source from Green Hill. So now we don't have enough water coming from Green Hill to properly augment the supply in St. Peter's. So I understand the frustration, because some people will hear, oh, we have desal. And, you know, Taylors get their water, Keyon get their water, Bird Rock get their water, Village get their water. Well, what happened to us here in St. Peter's? The point is our system is still a mix between desalination, rainfall water, what we call surface water, and also groundwater, which is the water we take from our aquifers. So those areas that are still connected to our runoff water or surface water, they will be affected in times of drought. And some areas of St. Peter's will be affected based on drought. But I just want to reaffirm the residents of that particular area, because I know that there has been some concern about the water levels there, especially being so close to Bastia. Why is our water, sometimes people ask, why is our water being cut off? Your water is not technically being cut off, it's just that we don't have the water. And so we need to close up so that we can capture some water, so that at least we can provide water for some hours of the day. And this is a direct relation of the impact of the change in climate. 50% reduction in rainfall. Now I wanted to say something else. Well, perhaps before I get into that example, what about the other areas of St. Kitts? Because people will be asking for other areas of St. Kitts. So as we head west, from outside of Bastia, generally the Old Road area and so on, past Mattingly, is generally okay, because their runoff water is not reduced enough to affect them, but it is possible. They get water from Wingfield, from Franklands, and from, there's one other source there. It's reduced, but it can still provide the water. But we are in a precarious position now, where if we continue in this type of drought, it will affect those communities as well. But right now, we are also drilling in Saddlers to augment the supply on the northwestern side of the island. Once we're finished with Saddlers, we go to St. Paul's and then to Sandy Point. So the efforts continue. And we have said, when I became minister, when we took over, only less than 25% of this country had access to 24-hour water. Now we're inching closer to 70%. Whenever we get to complete the St. Peter's connection, we will be at 70% of the population that has 24-hour water. So I understand the frustration. We want water. Water is a critical and needed commodity that is there to sustain life. But the government and the Labour Party administration in particular has put significant resources and support behind the development. And it is important to recall that we have reached from less than 25%, closer to about 20%, to almost 70% in just 3.5 years.
Yeah.
While the administration before us had 7.5 years, and the amount of people that had 24-hour water actually reduced in those times to below 25% water. One other thing I would say about water for now is this is an excellent opportunity to explain one of the concerns that persons would have had over time. Leading up to this drought, we had some increased rainfall. Leading up to December and so on, even maybe in January, etc., we had some increased rainfall. So people would say, Congress or Minister or Labour, why you all don't build some big tanks to catch the water that is running off in these guts? Why are we wasting all of that water to the guts? Then I tried to explain, and I'm going to explain again now. I think when I was here the last time with you, which was prior to January, it was in December.
And I remember the debate on the outside as well.
Yes, right. So let us say that we took, let's say it cost about $4 million, $5 million or so, call it $6 million to build 1 million gallon of storage.
Okay.
Right? Let's use that figure. 1 million gallons, about for ease of reference, 1 million gallon storage, $5 million, easy. Let's use that. We need about 7 million gallons of water in St. Kitts every day to be 24-hour. Let's use that figure. If I were to build, and the Prime Minister decided to stop everything else in the country and gave us enough money to build 21 million gallons of storage. That is 21 times 6. Let's call that, let's round it off, $140 million or so. Let's say he stopped everything else, all other projects. He says, stop, we're building storage, 21 million gallons of storage. And we were able also to find the money to direct the water from these guts to these storage tanks. When we had that downpour in December or January, and we filled up those 21 million gallons of storage, which will cost us $150 million to build, plus the other millions to direct the water, so call it $200 million to fill up these 21 million gallons of storage. How many days of water do we have? 3 days of water.
Wow.
Only 3 days.
Yes, because it's 7 million gallons of water a day we need. So if I build 21 million gallons of storage and I fill it up from a rain event, I have 3 days of water.
Wow.
So it means I would have to have a downpour of rain
every
3 days to keep it up. So now that we are in this dry season, where it hasn't rained like that for now a month, 2 months, what will happen with those $200 million of investment that you have, that you were hoping to fill from the gut water? They would be empty. And so I wanted to emphasize that our issue is not about storage. Storage is not a solution to a drought situation. Our situation is a source problem. We need a constant source. In fact, the opposite is true. If you have zero storage in the country, but you have a regular source, like a river, you don't need storage. You plug up your pipe to the river, you put it on a filter, and you don't need storage. The opposite is true. But we can build 100 million gallons of storage in a heartbeat, in a finger snap, right now, and it will not give us any solution. Because what will we put in that? And even if we do it during the rainy season, what happens to those 6 months that we don't have that type of water? So that is why the desalination now is so very critical. Because rain or shine, dry season or wet season, that plant, once operated correctly, once maintained properly, can produce 2 million gallons of water per day. And that costs $50 million to do, including the backup systems, etc. So look at that. 50 million to get 2 million gallons a day, constantly. $200 million to get 3 days of water, depending on a downpour of rain. So the economics alone will always lead you to the point of focusing on source. We have to develop source. So what we're doing, we've drilled the wells in Keon, that's source. We've done 2 million gallons of water per day from the desalination, that is source. We're drilling wells in Sadler's, in St. Paul's, in Sandy Point, and some other areas. That is source, because we have to develop source. Unfortunately, we cannot depend on rainfall anymore. It is unpredictable, it is reducing, and there is no sign that it is going to increase in the future. And so I want to thank the St. Kitts Labour Party administration for not having a knee-jerk reaction to the water situation. And we appreciate that some of us are still not yet at 24-hour water, but we are moving in the right direction. Remember, less than 25% had access. Close to 70% now will have access to 24-hour water. That's a significant improvement by any standard at all. But I do feel and understand the frustration that some in communities who may have had water 2 months ago,
Yes.
but it's directly related to the reduction in rainfall. We unfortunately cannot force the rain to come. And recently it's been setting up to rain. It rained for like 2 seconds. And then it done.
Drizzle, yes.
Just now it was raining for the soil ain't even capturing that.
Because there are times where rain will fall and outside is still very, very, very dry.
Absolutely.
Right? Because I guess the place is so parched. You know?
Yes, it's very, very parched. And the outlook is not very good either. I would want to report that based on the predictions, it is expected that the upcoming rainy season will be below normal. So it means that we're not expected to get the type of rainfall that we are accustomed to. So that's disheartening, but fortunately we are putting the things in place to be a bit more resilient in these times. Had these efforts been done or started 10 years ago, Jamie, we really would not be in this problem.
Are there further plans for more desalination plants?
Right. I like that question. You know why I like that question? Because at the start of this, people were iffy.
But I mean, you came here, you explained
yes.
the process, and
Yes.
you told us that you brought the scientists.
Correct.
So I think people are more comfortable.
Yes, so I know
with the
people were
idea.
iffy about
Yes.
desalination, right? But the reality is that desalinated water is the best quality water we can actually generate in our system, right? Because even our groundwater is exposed to all of the minerals in the ground. So we have wells which have water in it, which you cannot use because the mineral content in that water is too high for human consumption. So what we will need to do is to put a treatment plant there to be able to purify the water just as you would purify
Yes.
salt water. So we have to do that. But desalinated water is what the purest water that you will be able to get. It is so pure that it's also corrosive, meaning pure water mixing with iron when it's exposed to oxygen will oxidize, right? And so it will be corrosive. Our water that comes from our aquifers actually have corrosion inhibiting minerals, so it prevents corrosion. So you also have to balance that, right? So
And with the aquifer, you have to look at pollution as well, and there are issues in terms of what runoff water and that
correct,
kind of thing.
and where that happens,
Yes.
right? Especially for the Bastia Valley aquifer. Why? Because the surface is so close to the water table.
Yes, yes.
In a place like Sadler's where we're drilling, we are 500 feet above the water table, about. So contamination on the surface does not affect the water the same way.
Okay.
That is why we have to preserve the Bastia Valley aquifer, because it's actually so close to the water table. But when we designed the 2 million gallon desalination plant, we designed it to be able to expand to 4 million gallons. So we already contemplated that we might need to expand that given. And that
Any
is,
time frame?
well, given that how fast the drought is coming on, I think we're going to have to look to see how fast we could do that.
Yes.
But there is some interconnection that needs to happen, because while we can build a new desal, we also need to be able to move that water from that area around the country. That in itself is a large investment, because we're going to need like 16 or 20-inch pipes, 2 feet size pipes, to be able to go, let's say, along our bypass road and come across here to be able to distribute that water. So we already have all of those plans, and we're looking at timing and, of course, being able to finance something like that. Everyone has to play their part, though, because the government obviously has expended a lot to bring where we are and still are. We want to encourage persons to also play their part. One, conservation. Ensure that you're being conservative with the water that you use. I know some persons will say, well, look, the government, they have a leaking tank. That's a common retort. But I always give the example. The government may have 22 tanks, and let's say 3, 4, 5 of them are leaking. And let's say we're losing 100 gallons a day. That's just an estimate on each tank. So let's say the government is losing 500 gallons a day. We have 20,000 households. If you only lose or waste 1 gallon, that's 20,000 gallons that we have lost in a day. So because of how many consumers we have compared to government facilities, the government's losses will never come close to the losses we are experiencing at the consumer level. So your toilet, a running toilet that is just dripping in households, is costing us hundreds of thousands of gallons of water from our system every day. Every minute extra that you run your pipe, other people are doing that too. That is costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars in our system. So the reality is, if everyone in St. Kitts was asked to cut down their usage by 20%, whatever you use now, if you run the pipe for 2 minutes to brush your teeth, if you run it for, let's say, 1.5 minutes, if everybody did that, we would actually save hundreds of thousands of gallons, as opposed to a leaking tank from the government or even a leaking pipe. So I want to encourage persons to be a part of the process by conserving water. Also, it is important to pay your bills and pay your bill on time. Water is an affordable commodity in St. Kitts. The government still subsidizes the cost of water. What you're paying for water is nowhere close what it costs to produce the water. In fact, I have given the example, right now you can buy a bottle, a gallon in the supermarket from the water companies for, it's more than $5, right? But I'm going to use $5 as an example, just to show this situation. So let's say you can buy a 1 gallon bottle of water in the supermarket for $5. The government charges about $7.20 on average for 1,000 gallons. So it means that if you were to buy that water, bottled water, equivalent to the amount government gives you, let's say you bought 1,000 gallons, you would pay $5,000 for something the government is charging you $7.20.
Wow.
Think about that. You are paying $5,000 and more, because it's not $5 anymore for a gallon. 5,000 gallons for the same amount of water that the government is charging you $7.20. I have to give a pat to the back of the water companies. They have figured out something. Because if they are buying a commodity, well, they probably pay commercial rates, which might be $15. They're buying something for $15 and selling it for $5,000.
Sounds like a business idea.
Sounds like a good business idea, right? But it just shows that the water price is up. Well, obviously it is below what it costs to produce the water. But we're asking our consumers to pay your bill, be a part of the solution. That will then give the government the opportunity to do all of the other expansions that we have to do, because obviously they cost money. So if you play your part, we will do our part as well. And that is why we pursue this water agenda. We invested significantly. millions and millions of dollars to bring us to this point, but we still have more work to do. And we appreciate that, and we understand the frustrations, but we are doing the work.
Okay, fantastic. Now, Minister Maynard, we do want to hear from our listeners because I'm certain that they are anxious to interact with you. So we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be right back, and we'll allow our listeners to call in. Those of you who want to interact with the minister, please call now at 662-1065, 465-6474, or 465-0546. We'll be right back.
FreedomFM1065.com. From St. Kitts and Nevis to the world, Freedom FM 106.5 FM.
Every day we're faced with choices: to spend or to save, to delay or to stay on track. It's discipline that shapes our future, because discipline means making the choice today that pays off tomorrow. Remember, discipline, choice, pays. A message from the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Have you heard that Mind, Body, and Soul is back?
Yes, Mind, Body, and Soul is back on Sundays at 4 p.m. only on Freedom FM, hosted by the inspiring Julie Charles. This is your go-to show for thought-provoking and uplifting conversations. Every Sunday, dive into topics that nourish your mind, body, and soul. From wellness tips to personal growth to deep conversations, Julie brings you the stories that inspire change and spark reflection. Don't miss out. Tune into Minds, Body, and Soul on Sundays at 4 p.m. and let Freedom FM guide you to a more balanced and inspired life. Mind, Body, and Soul on Freedom FM Sundays at 4 p.m.
Wake up, worship, walk in purpose. Start your day grounded in faith with morning devotions with Serenade. Uplifting worship, powerful reflections, and encouragement to strengthen you for what lies ahead. Join us Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 a.m., right here on Freedom FM 106.5. Anointed mornings, empowered days.
Feet on the floor, but my heart looking high.
Get the Freedom FM app now. Just search Freedom FM app on Google Play or the Apple App Store and start listening today.
We are back at 2:38. This is Progress Reports right here on Freedom FM, and we're going to go straight to the phone lines because I'm certain that the callers are anxious to interact with Minister Maynard. Now, we're asking you to keep your calls short and to be respectful. Let's go to the phone lines. Good afternoon, Minister. Put on your headphones, please. Good afternoon. Okay, we missed that one. Let's try this one. We missed that one as well, but the numbers to call in are 662-1065, 465-6474, or 465-0546. Let's try this one. Good afternoon. You're live.
Good afternoon, Jamie. Good afternoon, Mr. Minister. I know that you've ran the figures concerning storage, but I think you have to remember that it was just augmenting the sources that we already have. You know, it was not a one-time thing. Because I guarantee you that If someone a household has a tank, one of those large tanks, for instance, that's filled, it's going to last more than 3 days.
Sorry, explain how it gets filled.
No. Regards to how it gets filled. What I'm saying is, when you have large downpours, for instance, okay, you can fill those tanks, right? Just like what actually they're doing now. The fact is, it can last more than 3 days. And in any case, right, I want to refer you to Premier Brantley, who just a few weeks ago, I think, in a broadcast that he had, I think it might have been a press conference, was boasting that Nevis has 24/7 water supply, and at the same time saying St. Peter's people were complaining, right? So Nevis must be doing something that we can perhaps emulate. And one of the things, if you go visit Nevis, you see storage tanks all over the place. Okay, I'm not saying that is what actually solves it. I suppose it's a combination of things. But what I'm saying is, maybe we should look at our sister island and see how they managed to solve their problem, because we know that they had a serious problem, just like what we had. Okay, and they don't have as much desalination as we do. So just a thought, maybe, there are other ways of solving this. Okay? All right.
Okay, Mr. McMahon, thank you so much. Minister, with your permission, I'll take another call and then you can respond. Good afternoon, caller. You're live.
Greetings to His Highness.
Greetings.
Extended greetings to your guest, the honorable guest. Okay, we did remember welcoming the increase in the minimum wage. Even though it is said that the cost of living, it is said, that is a talk on the road. The cost of living automatically increases when we get a little touch on the salary. And it was good to hear the honorable PM touch that also. But we need to observe that more, because up to the time, it is still to a point where people are crying out with the cost of living now, the way you find things have different prices, different places, and just keep going up. Okay, the other thing we want to touch on is how long are we going to wait before we implement policies, legislation to keep the land of beauty the way they are to keep the land, the Tinkers and Nevis both. Nevis seems to be ahead of us where that is concerned. I haven't been over there for quite a while, but I know when it comes to the nastiness, I think it surpasses Nevis with that. How long are we going to wait before we legislation, policies, zero tolerance to littering? From a sweetie paper, go right up to whatever the big things that have been shown in the cane field, Gottside, etc. We have said it, and we want to echo it also, that we seems not to want to ruffle feathers of nasty people, big up clean people, all of us is not nasty, because of the expectation of the exes. See, general election is somewhere around the corner. And that is very sad. That is very sad. Because the nastiness is coming to a point of crisis, even though some people are saying we're the cleanest or more, we're cleaner than so and so and so. Foolishness. We're not in no competition where that is concerned. We just want to know that Tinkers and Nevis is as it ought to be. We spoke about even government offices. I'm on my way there now. There's a garbage heap on the empty land just below government headquarters, where I saw a rat coming running out of the other night and running over to the other part where the new building just, the street where the new building just erected there. And that is very sad, because as administration, example need to be shown. And we also spoke about that entity that is called solid waste, having a motto like waste matters. I mean, waste don't matter. What kind of foolishness is that? What matters is cleanliness. If waste matters, then we shouldn't go to the toilet, because we go to the toilet to get rid of waste, whether it is urinate or defecate. Yeah? We need to get our act together where this nastiness is concerned. And we have to stop sweeping things on the carpet. Somebody calling from somewhere in America and talk about we who are talking about the nastiness are strangers to the truth. Eh? Like we don't know what we are seeing, we don't know what we are smelling when we move around in St. Kitts. Right throughout the countryside, right through the land, you see this littering just continue. And we just keep on pussyfooting with it. Like all of us is nasty people. Here, we are the most, is we cross and went into Europe and teach other people how to bathe, how to have a bath regularly, cleanliness. And we are a Christian people. It is said that cleanliness is next to godliness. If you walk around and act, if you believe in God, everybody going to say yes. Where this nastiness is coming from? All over St. Kitts. Littered.
Okay, caller, we do have to take some more calls.
I will pay for the extra time, man.
But it's not about you paying for the extra time. It's about other people want to interact with the listeners.
And it's human, almost walking human, whatever.
Good afternoon, caller. You're live.
Good afternoon, Jamie. Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I know you are the Minister for Water and also Electricity, more so geothermal. Now, I believe the people of St. Kitts Nevis are very much confused. The last conversation I heard from you and the federal government is about geothermal. At one point you say you raised, I think, $16 million to start something. And then you went to Saudi Arabia again and they decided on that. Now, I'm hearing the Premier now talking the same thing about geothermal and that the drill rig would be soon here. And my thing is, shed some light on that for us. If not now, in another setting, that we could know clearly who's responsible for geothermal. Because Nevis geothermal being used as an election gimmick. They've been using this for a very long time. And every time the election is near, they're going to bring somebody. I want to know how the federal government stand with it at this point. I don't want to know that the federal government is going to use it for politics and they call the election first. They don't bring it and then leave it, start use it or vice versa. We want some light shed on that portion of it. And so that we could move forward properly, knowing that geothermal is going to come under the federal government, with the help of the federal government, because don't forget, we had that situation one time when we were close to geothermal, and Ian Patty's library with the team Unity said they're going to look at Nevis geothermal, but they're also bringing some drillers from Guadeloupe to check to see if St. Kitts got any. And they know St. Kitts one will be difficult, and Nevis up to now hasn't seen the light of geothermal. Let us know how you stand with that as the minister. Thank you.
Thank you, caller, for that contribution. The lines are quiet, Minister. So.
All right. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Jamie. So, in relation to the first call about the observing what was done in Nevis and the issue of storage tank, etc., I've had this discussion with this gentleman, and I again put out my call. This is an open administration. We do not believe that we have a monopoly on ideas. However, I did sing a song about talking. What I would love for the gentleman to do is to bring the information that could be useful to us. The way he's explaining it is not sufficient for us to understand what solution he's saying alternatively exists. And so we are open. my office is open, I will facilitate it. Bring the suggestions that you have so that we can have a proper look at it. Because based on what you're explaining, it doesn't appear that it will help to really do any easement of that situation. For instance, anybody who has storage tanks now, let's say connected to their rooftop, when was the last time that could have been filled? Now, an average household will lose, four persons in a household may use maybe, let's say, 4,000 gallons a month of water. I think the UN, the average is about 50 gallons per person per day or something like that. So it might be a bit more than that. So even if you do 50 gallons per person for a family of 4, that's 200 gallons a day. And you have 10 is 2,000, so that's 6,000 gallons of water a month you need. If rainfall continues to be an issue, especially in the dry season, where we can have a week where you do not have water, neither to fill the storage on the house or the storage that the government supplies, the answer is not increasing your storage. You have to increase the source. So then you ask, what did Nevis do? Nevis did not increase their storage to catch more water. No, they increased their source, and then they matched the storage to the source that they have increased. Nevis traditionally would have had water issues many years ago when St. Kitts did not have, because we had surface water, and we also went into a drilling campaign to drill wells around the nation. So we, at that point, were advanced to Nevis by having surface water and groundwater. That was a big expansion, I think maybe in the 60s, in the 70s, etc., of building out our groundwater resources, plus our surface water. Nevis took the initiative to do the exploration of their underground sources in order to find a source, not to build storage, to find a source. And it's important also for Mr. McMahon to perhaps understand that there is no better source that we can build in St. Kitts compared to our aquifers. Let me give an example. Our Bastia Valley aquifer can produce about 2 million gallons of water per day. Remember I said it hasn't rained properly for 2 months. Yet, that aquifer is still producing 2 million gallons of water per day. So in a month, that is 10 million, 10 is 20 million, sorry. So that's 60 million gallons of water per month that the Bastia aquifer is providing, rain, shine, or drought. It means that that aquifer actually can hold billions of gallons of water. So that is a storage for us. The challenge, though, is that the rainfall is decreasing. And so what we're doing is not dissimilar to what Nevis has done and what we did previously. But we're taking that expansion to the other parts of the island, which is areas like St. Paul's, Sandy Point, Date Bay, come around to that level. So we're doing that expansion there. The issue is not storage. I want to emphasize again, do an exercise. Eliminate all the storage in St. Kitts as an exercise and give me a consistent source. Will I have a problem? No. If I were to cut out all storage, take every storage, look at any metropolitan city, any developed city. You see any house or anybody has storage? No. Because there are other issues that come out of storage. When people have storage, you now have to manage how they are storing and keeping water. If, for instance, you have storage, even a small amount of storage, and it is not kept properly, whether from insects or the right chemicals and so on are not added, you can have stagnation of water, you can have diseases that develop, and so you can't manage it as effectively as possible. So any well-developed country or well-developed city will move more away from storage so that you can properly manage the water source. In a place like Bermuda, for instance, would have put policies as to what you have to place on your roof to act as natural filtration for the water to store it. So these things are considered, but I again emphasize that if there are solutions that we are not seeing, I invite Mr. McMahon to our ministry so that we can properly go through them. It is not sufficient to just repeat similar sentiments without having something that we can go on. I'm an engineer by profession. I want solutions. I want to see solutions, right? And that is how I operate. So I'm open to it, but I don't quite understand the solutions that he's proposing, because when we expand on them, they do not provide the solution. And he said that perhaps we could look at Nevis. Well, I invite him to do that. I have gone to Nevis. I've sat with the ministry. I visited their facilities. I went into their operation rooms. I took my ministry over there to do that some time ago. We invited Nevis as well to be a part of our installation of pipelines when we were doing the desalination pipeline, because they also had experience that we had not had as yet. So I have gone for that.
Because there's a desal plant.
There's also a desal plant in Nevis, exactly like one in St. Kitts. That is what the UAE donated to both of our islands, but that is a very, very small installation. But the pipelines, Nevis has already gone ahead and installing what you call HDPE pipelines, which is another level of pipeline, similar to plastic, not PVC, but it's a hardened form of plastic for water solutions. And so they had experience in one in that. So we invited them over to be a part of our team. We have sent our team over for days in Nevis and so on. So we've done that. And I invite him to do the same so that he could understand what they would have done to reach to a point where they have 24-hour water. It took time for them, took years for them to accomplish that. And we are doing the same thing now. That was dropped 7.5 years in the former administration. That project and the way forward had already started by the time we hit 2014, 2015. But for whatever reason, it was abandoned in 2015. And so now we had to restart it come 2022. So yes, I understand, but I'm open. Our doors are open. 662-9758, 662-9758. Make a call. Let's make an arrangement. I want to see what you have. That is how I operate. I am a very hands-on person. I go to the sources. I've climbed the sources. I've gone to the tanks. Because I want to truly understand and make sure that we're doing the right thing. So that's water in Egypt. Now, in terms of geothermal, there's a young man who called in about the cleanliness and so on, etc. I want him to know that there is a bill that we passed in Parliament called the Community Beautification and Safety Bill. Now we are presently currently finalizing all the details with the respective departments and stakeholders. And I think they're doing some test modeling of that bill in different communities. This is to keep the place clean. We are now, for instance, abandoned properties and all of these things will have the force of the law and the teeth of the law to enforce cleanliness. So I would invite him. You could probably check St. Kitts Law Commission for the bill to go through that act and see whether or not you have further recommendations maybe to strengthen it. But it's called...
Is that bill being enforced?
No, it's not.
It's not in Parliament.
It's passed.
It's passed.
But it is now being, all of the different parameters are being put together to enforce it. So it has not been enforced yet, but it has already been passed. So I want to encourage persons perhaps to go to the St. Kitts Law Commission, where you can get a copy of the bill, and the caller who called in can have a look at it and then make any recommendations, because again, we are open to advancing any particular cause. I realize that he's particularly passionate about this, which is good, because St. Kitts has always been known to be a very clean place, but we need to keep that that way. In terms of geothermal, someone is asking for some clarity on geothermal. I understand where there can be confusion. Before this administration, before the Labour Party administration, there was clearly a disconnect within the same government. You had the Nevis Island administration portion of the administration pushing for the development of geothermal on the island of Nevis. Meanwhile, while in the joint cabinet we understand the position coming out generally was the support for the development of the geothermal in Nevis. However, when this is how they say it, this is just how it's been reported, when the Nevis contingent then takes the boat over to Nevis, another cabinet start where the decision is no, we're going to see if we could explore geothermal on St. Kitts. So one of the things that I witnessed when I first came to this position was our geopolitical partners from around the world point blank asked us, are you guys serious? Because Nevis is telling us this, and your federal government was telling us this. Nevis is saying they're ready to move forward. The federal government is saying, wait, no, we believe we have geothermal on the island of St. Kitts and we want to explore that. And so there has been that disconnect. And so what happened as a result of that is that finance that had become available was held up. So the Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Drew, upon assuming office, there was already a draft letter ready to open up financing avenues for the Nevis geothermal. But the federal government at the time chose not to, for whatever reason, not to support that initiative. We supported it immediately. And so that opened up the $60 million that he's speaking about, which is a risk mechanism where if you drill and you find nothing, that money turns into a grant. If you drill and you're able to produce power, then it turns into a concessionary loan. So it was $60 million plus $1 million for technical support, etc. So that is now available to us. Where we are at is that the process now, so the government is supporting the geothermal development on the island of Nevis. We went to Parliament and we passed a resolution declaring that there will be support from the federal level and from the Nevis Island Administration for the development of geothermal on the island of Nevis, to indicate to our international stakeholders that we are serious about this. We went further and signed off to agree that the Federation will take on the debt and the funding to pay for the geothermal development. It can't happen without federal sign-off. We went further, he mentioned, and we spoke with Saudi Arabia, who also gave the guarantee. Now, the interesting thing about that 60 million that is done through the CDB with international climate partners is, as I said, that provides some risk mitigation for the project. So others who are bringing their money know that if in the beginning it fails, their money is not at risk, because that 60 million will start it off. So what happened then, it went to procurement, led by the CDB as the agency dealing with the dispersing of the money. And the first procurement highlighted some shortcomings of the process. One, that the way the procurement was developed, it was more based on traditional building and buildings, etc. Whereas geothermal is very uncertain. There's high risk. You're going a kilometer down into the ground, 1,000 meters into the ground. You have no idea exactly what you're going to meet. It's all theoretical until you get there. And so those things had to be put into the procurement process. Additionally, the amount that they went to in that procurement was so small that the big drilling companies around the world who have the experience say, how can we come to a remote, I put in quotation marks, a remote part of the world like Nevis to drill such small amount of wells? So we had to increase the number of wells as well so that it is more attractive. I am pleased to say that after that, they redid the procurement process. It went back out for procurement. A number of top companies around the world bidded for it. And there was a winner that was announced a few weeks or months ago, which was the Iceland Drilling Company. I've had the pleasure to meet with them, but I've also had the pleasure to visit some of their successful applications around the world. Recently, the European Union would have sponsored a geothermal tour that included myself as minister and practitioners from both islands of St. Kitts and Nevis to visit the Azores, where we saw the geothermal plants in action and in operation, and was able to learn from beginning to end what they did to achieve it. And so we're now at this stage where the drilling is hopefully going to begin later this year. So the contract is signed, the money is available, and so now it's just the technical operation matters that are being put in place.
How long do you anticipate that process taking?
To start or to drill?
Not to drill.
Right, so that's another unknown, right? Because you don't know what you're going to meet. Remember, it's 1,000 meters into the ground, a kilometer.
Now I'm asking because, we've been hearing about geothermal energy for a long time.
Correct.
And as I said to you in a previous conversation, it sounds like, a good idea, pie in the sky kind of idea.
Correct.
But I think what we really want to see is
you want
action.
to see. Yes.
Right?
It's so difficult sometimes to really explain and for persons to appreciate because you can't see anything tangible.
Exactly.
Right? But when I hear the stories of some of these other countries that have started this 100 years ago, like Iceland, who started geothermal many, many years ago, they have learned so much that our time frame is actually going to be shortened. The challenge with geothermal is the upfront cost. Right? The upfront cost is significant. And the risk, because right now it's only the theory and some testing, because we've done test wells in Nevis, that has at least, let me give an example. One of the sites we visited at the Azores had a geothermal plant that had a wave-like supply. So today you may have high heat, and tomorrow the heat goes down. Why? Because they have the proper scientific name for it, but basically there's a heat flow under the ground, and so it goes like waves. So you have a high wave and you have a low wave. Now we don't anticipate that will happen because of the archaeological structure of or geological structure of Nevis. We expect that is going to be fairly constant, but we don't know that until we drill a production well and start extracting the heat from the wells. So it's a high unknown. So that is why this type of risk mitigation facility that the CDB has offered is a good one, because there is the possibility, of course, although slim, we estimate that the heat source is not going to be enough. We have a risk mitigation asset or facility that will deal with that. So the reason why it has taken so long is because of that initial investment amount that is so significant just to drill a few wells.
So, Minister, I've got to ask you to justify that risk. Why are we so certain that this will become a reality?
Right. So, as with everything, just like when we're drilling for water, we see the profile, they do the science, there's a profile list, and it says the probability is X, 70% or 80% or 90%. The probability in Nevis is extraordinarily high. So based on all other tests we've seen around the world in terms of the resource, if we are comparing the results we are getting from the testing of the sites in Nevis to those test sites that actually now have production, Nevis's preliminary information is better than theirs.
Fantastic.
So therefore, that is what gives you the confidence that you can move.
So
also,
that coupled with the transformative potential.
Correct. So, and also, another important thing to look at is nature always gives you clues. Always. You know that there's a hot spring in Nevis. If you are to visit Iceland, one of the attractions is their hot spring. So in the middle of a cold winter, you could go into a hot spring because of the geothermal energy that is there. So Nevis, the island itself, without any science, has told us that there is a lot of heat that is down there, that is close enough to the surface to extract, because it is reaching to the surface. So the island itself, the beautiful island of Nevis, has already told us that I have the potential. But the science corroborates that. The science says, based on the slim hole wells that have been dug, based on the temperature readings that they have, in fact, when I looked at the temperature profile of the wells in the Azores, meaning what temperatures they expect to get to produce the energy. Our temperatures are higher. Our temperatures are higher. Our soil is also better to operate in. So we, based on all of the science, it looks very promising. And it also tells you why the CDB is willing, and financiers is willing to give such a risk mitigating facility. They're not going to give you 16 million US dollars because they think it's going to fail. They're doing that because they think it's going to be successful. And so we have every confidence that we can have legitimately, based on the science before us, that there will be success. The problem was the coordination of the federal government and the Nevis Island administration to put it in. Now, while we might disagree on a number of things, that is the Nevis Island administration, because their leaders sit on the opposition benches in Parliament. So they probably oppose us on a lot of things. This is one issue where there is no daylight. We are supporting the development of geothermal on the island of Nevis for the benefit of Nevis and the St. Kitts. We are also developing the interconnection between the two islands, meaning we will connect the two grids, the Nevis Island Administration, the Nevlec grid, and the Skelec grid, so that energy that is produced on the island of Nevis can also flow over to St. Kitts and vice versa. Why this is important? Because the wells that they're about to drill can potentially produce maybe 30 megawatts of power. Nevis only needs 10 megawatts. So it is not a good business case to anybody to drill for 30 megawatts if you only have 10 megawatts of demand. But when you add St. Kitts to that now, the demand increases to 40 megawatts. So now the business case looks much better.
But then there are those who argue that it would be easier for Nevis to just drill the 10 megawatts.
But it's more costly. Why? It doesn't make economic sense.
And then the people didn't want to come to drill for that amount.
But not only that, remember, just like anything, it's always, the cost is always almost in mobilization. To bring your rig station here for 10 megawatts is going to cost the same for 30 megawatts.
Okay.
So therefore, you have to utilize the opportunity you have to drill as much. In fact, the Green Climate Fund visited, and I accommodated them with a tour of the facility on Nevis. And when they came and realized themselves, this is the actual person who is in charge, and saw the potential, we went through the science and so on, they gave a commitment that while the rig is here, they want us to find more money to be able to drill more wells so that we can maximize the drill rig being here. So it looks promising.
Okay, Minister Mena, we are practically out of time.
And
time tends to fly
absolutely,
by
absolutely.
so
I need to come a bit more often so that we can give some more information. There are just one or two things I wanted to touch on quickly before we wrap.
Yes.
One, in terms of my constituency, persons will realize that our cluster home development has started. That is in the Buckley's housing area. An area has been cleared, and we're going to be building some affordable homes for our people there, in line with the rest of what is happening in the country. So those of you who have not yet applied and made sure that your application is in and so on, etc., please make sure to do that. This is obviously just the first tranche, and so obviously it will not cater for everybody, but consistent with the push for the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Administration to continue this housing revolution, constituency number 3 definitely will not be left out. Another important issue that I want to address quickly is energy, our energy independence on the island of St. Kitts. So we have geothermal that we're working on in Nevis. The drilling will take some time. I can't even tell you how long it will take to drill. We are drilling a well right now in Sadlers, and as we go down, we are meeting things in the soil that we did not know what was there. Right? And then we have to adjust accordingly, and so it has taken a lot longer than we anticipated, even for Sadlers. But there are some certain technologies that we are aware of, and that is, for instance, solar energy. And so Skelec has launched what is called a request for proposal, an official RFP for a 50 megawatt solar PV farm and a 30 megawatt hour battery. What does that mean? So we need about 30 megawatts of power in St. Kitts, but that's constant base load power. So the solar farm has to now generate enough to help that base load power during the day, but also enough to then store in a battery. So just a quick thing, sometimes I can get into these teaching moments because I used to teach. 30 megawatt hours means that I can produce 30 megawatts of power for 1 hour. So if it's 10 megawatts that I'm using, then that might last 3 hours. So it's a 30 megawatt hour battery, which is to do two things. One, to help to stabilize the grid, because when you have a cloud cover, etc., imagine you have a 50 megawatt plant. It's supplying electricity to everybody, and then a cloud comes over. That power will drop off almost instantaneously. What you need is a battery that will then act like your phone or your laptop when you plug it out, or anything that uses a charger, that the battery takes over quickly, keeps the power on until you could bring back up the power again, so you don't see a drop. So that is one of the main reasons for the battery. Also, to be able to have a little extra solar power either before in the morning, if you have residual amounts in the battery, or in the evenings as the solar goes down, then the battery can taper off, etc. I just spoke with somebody in the energy sector in Barbados, discussing some solar issues, and they were telling me about the challenges that they're having in Barbados. And I said that as an electrical engineer, I don't want us to have those similar challenges, and so we'll be very mindful of them. What it is that they have put on a lot of solar energy onto the grid, and with solar energy comes the instability, because you have this on and off with the sun and the rain and so on, etc. So you can do something where you destabilize the grid, and you're unable to keep your frequencies, and power outages and so on and blah, blah, blah will happen. We don't want that to happen, and so that is why we are insistent that this project must also have a large element of battery energy storage. And at another time, we're going to have a press conference shortly, later this month, for my ministry, where you can get some more detailed information of this. But I just wanted to inform that the RFP was launched, I think, at the end of March. We had tremendous interest in it from all across the globe, because the way in which we did it to the highest international standards. We were, the transaction advisor is a group called Castalia. I think they're based maybe in Washington, D.C. They have tremendous experience around the globe developing large-scale, utility-scale solar projects and other renewable energy projects. So we built everything from scratch from the beginning of 2025. Spent about 11, 12 months getting everything ready. All the due diligence, all the techno-economic analysis, all the impact analysis on the grid impact analysis. We did market sounding, meaning we spoke with all of the professional developers around the region who have had successful projects in the past. We discussed with them, and we developed an RFP package that became very, very interesting and attractive to developers around the globe. And so those, we got over 105, I think, or over 100 initial bidders for this project. That is unheard of. Now, we don't expect it's going to stay that number at all. A lot of persons will apply and realize the scope of this project, that they really are not in a position to do it. And so that has been whittled down by each stage until we get to the final person or developer that wins the project. Now, people will say, well, what about local involvement? Well, for this project, we ensured that there could be local involvement. So, first of all, the bid was open to anybody, so anybody could bid locally. But for those of us in this country who do not have an experience building a 50 megawatt solar farm, the opportunity is there to partner and to become equity partners with developers as well. So you could have registered as an investor. We also opened a portal where you can register as a contractor, that you provide any type of service, whether it is food, whether it is whatever it is, civil works, you can register. And then when the project is also built, there's going to be a requirement that a portion of the shares must be available for locals to be able to partake in. So at every step of the way, we have ensured that we include and facilitate participation of local homegrown investors, contractors, and persons willing to buy small shares or large shares in this company. So that is a big project. Another very big project in energy, which is important, especially in this time of rising oil prices and fuel prices, is a project called Solarize, which we launched at the end of April. Solarize allows you to put rooftop solar on your solar panels on your rooftop, and for the excess energy, SKN will give you a credit. Now, I will advise persons, don't look to build your system to get the SKN credit. That is not where you're going to maximize your benefit. Because it's something called net billing that we use. Every kilowatt hour which you use, every bit of energy that you use, that you do not take from SKN, you're saving 70 cents per kilowatt hour. Right now, the average price for electricity for a residential home is 70 cents per kilowatt hour. Quickly, once you self-use, meaning you create solar energy, you store some of it in a battery, you will then be able to save 70% for each kilowatt hour that you use. If you put it back into the grid, you're only getting 11 cents for it. So the trick is to design your system, and I'll make sure you tell whomever is designing your system, you want maximum self-use. That is where you can bring your bill literally to zero, and that's very critical. So Solarize, you can do your rooftop solar. I encourage persons to include battery. It will cost a little more at the beginning, but over time you will pay less for your electricity bill. And basically you replace your electricity bill with paying for your system. And then after 4 or 5 years, your system is paid off, you're effectively getting free electricity.
Fantastic.
The other program is the EV policy, which is called Drive, where we've now incentivized EV adoption.
Electronic vehicles.
Yes, electric vehicles, right? Where they no gas. So the Solarize helps you by not having to pay higher prices for electricity because of increased fuel prices. And the EV helps you because you now don't have to put gas in your vehicle. And we have now reduced duty on EV vehicles from 45%, which is what a regular duty what the regular duty is on vehicles right now, to 10%. So duty on EVs is only 10%. Additionally, for Solarize, all of your solar equipment up until December 31st of this year will be not only duty-free, it has always been duty-free, but it's also now tax-free. So no tax whatsoever on your solar equipment. So take the opportunity now to engage a practitioner and get a system, so that instead of paying SKN, if you pay SKN $200 or $300 or $400, pay that for your solar system and eliminate your SKN bill. So those are some of the things that I wanted to touch on. There's so much more that we're doing. We're going to have to come back another time. But I just want to wrap by saying that the St. Kitts Labour Party is adamant about doing good for our people. We are people-centered. That is what we are here to do. We are here to ensure that the masses and the fringes of our society, whether you're rich, poor, or in between, that you are taken care of. And our policies exhibit that continuously, whether it is in water, whether it is in cost of living, whether it is in the expansion of energy, whether it is in housing, whether it is land distribution, etc. We continue to focus on elevating and empowering our people. And I encourage you to stay tuned. We're going to be here, I think, every Wednesday to bring updates on behalf of the St. Kitts Labour Party, because we believe that we continue to serve in the interest of the people, and we also want to learn from the people as to where else we need to go, because we understand that we're not perfect, we don't have a monopoly on all the ideas, and we want you to be engaged to help us, to help you, so that we can advance our small Twin Island Federation forward. We're small, but we Talawa, and the world is watching, and we're getting some very good reviews on the stuff that we're doing. But those reviews mean nothing if it doesn't impact people directly.
Definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another edition of Progress Report. Minister Maynard, it's always a pleasure to have conversations with you. We learn so much during these one-on-one sessions with you, so we look forward to having you here in the not too distant future. This is what Progress Report is all about, keeping the conversation connected to you, the people. Coming up next on Freedom FM, we'll have Island Rhythms hosted by EK.
All right.
Summer, the Caribbean's premier music experience returns. Welcome to the 28th edition of the St. Kitts Music Festival, featuring the incredible Kilani, Fantasia, Beres